I hope everybody can see my screen, right, Nitish?
Yes, Jackie, we can.
Okay. So guys, today we will discuss about a RAML basically. So we will start with basic RAML, and then we will see how we can modularize our RAML, how we can enable a reusability in our RAML basically, and we will see a different component, how we can have our RAML in the different language, like if you want RAML in English, if you want RAML in Hindi, if you want RAML in Spanish, how can you undo that? So those kind of things we are going to see in today's session. Okay. So organizer, myself, Jitendra Bafna, I'm working as the senior solution architect at Capgemini, and I'm the Surat MuleSoft Meetup leader and the MuleSoft ambassador. And I have overall like 13 years of experience in the API technology, and I'm certified MuleSoft architect and the integration and platform architect. Nitish, you want to go?
Yeah, sure, sure, Jackie. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Nitish. I'm working as consultant in IBM Bangalore, and I am certified developer and integration architect. I have 2.5 years of experience, and welcome all.
Okay, thanks, Nitish, for the introduction. So again, it's the same. Like I myself is the speaker, and don't want to introduce it again. Okay. So at the end of the session, we will select 3 winners, and they will get a training voucher. But there are some conditions you need to be checked. Basically, you need you need to make sure like then you are selecting any training course. The first thing, anybody who is the fresher or like who's less experienced, they cannot go for MCIA, the MCPA training. They cannot go for architect or platform architect or integration architect training. The second, if anybody has won the voucher in last 1 month, please don't again apply for the voucher, because like give the chances to others. Like everybody can get some vouchers basically, because there are a lot of people are struggling to get some training voucher. So I will just motivate everyone, like just give a chance to others also. It will be very useful. So agenda, like we will discuss like what is API and RAML. Then we will see what is traits and resource type, what is library and fragments, what is security schema, what is overlays and the extension. Then we will follow with this will be followed with live demonstration. Okay. So let me ask one question. What is API? Venkat, it will be on my channel only. Like it's the same channel. Like you might be following it, my channel. It will be get uploaded to there. So okay, so you can check there. So there is a channel called Surat MuleSoft Meetup. You can search on YouTube. You will get all this video. Okay. So anybody want to talk about what is API?
So API is a gateway. It's a communication between the two systems and exchanging the data.
Right. Yeah. Any other definition? Krishna, Akut, like anybody want to speak on what is the API?
Yeah, sure, Jackie. API its full form is known as Application Programming Interface. What exactly API does is it helps to interact between two different systems, so that like a common kind of a message that helps to interact between two systems.
Yeah,
Common
that is true.
Format, yeah.
Correct. So first thing, the API is the platform and the language independent, right? So it's a platform independent. So basically it's an application programming interface which allow you to communicate with the backend system. So basically the mobile device or any web application want to unlock the data from your backend system, right? So you can make use of your API basically. The API is nothing like Krishna rightly said, and the son like they rightly said, like it enabled a communication between two system or two entities basically. That is the API. Okay. So generally, let's consider I have my mobile application and I want to retrieve a banking data, my transactions, my account details. I want to retrieve my balances. So what we do is we create an intermediate layer which is known as the API, which allow you to communicate between mobile application and your backend services. Okay. So anybody heard about this Richardson API maturity model? Like what is this Richardson API maturity model? So in Richardson API maturity model, there are the 3 levels. Start from level 0, then level 1, level 2, and level 3. So most of the organization is at the level 2. So like I feel like 90% of organization, maybe more than that, is at level 2. So like level 0 means like you have a single URI and the single word. So basically, all you are performing all your operation on the single verb. Verb means it's post, get, put, get. So you are using a single verb like get, and you are using like on this particular operation, on this particular verb, and on this particular URI, you are performing all the operation: update, delete, insert, whatever. On the single URI, on a single verb, you are performing all the operations. Level 2, you have a multiple URI. So you have a URI for different URI for update, different URI for create, different URI for delete, but you are using a single HTTP verb. You are using, might be using get for all the URI. You might be using post for all the URI. Even you want to update the record, you are using the post. Okay, this one. So level 2 is one of the fine grain, like level basically where you have a multiple URI, resource based URI, and multiple verbs. So in that case, like you have a like verbs for each and every operation basically. If you want to perform if you want to create resource, you will use post. If you want to fetch a data, you will use get. If you want to delete a data, you will use the delete verbs, right? So this is how a level 0, level 1, level 2. If you see, we most of the organization at a level 2. Then it comes to level 3. In level 3, what happens? It is extension of your level 2. In level 3, we embedded some URL into your JSON response. So basically, you are saying like, now you have performed this operation. So you give the what is the second operation you can perform. So those URL you provide in your response basically. Okay, so that is where the Helios come into picture. Okay, we have a multiple HTTP verbs: get for creating resource, post for get for fetching the resources, post for creating the resources, delete for deleting the resources, put will either update or either replace the resources. If resources already exist, okay, it will go and replace the resources. If resources not exist, it will go and create a new resources. Head is just to check, like if first you want to check, like if you want to perform some operation, before that you want to check whether this account or whether this entity is available. So the head of is used. Then we have option and trace. This is are using for a tracing purpose. So these are some HTTP verbs we will going to use in our demo, like our demo basically. Now I will ask question: what is RAML? Anybody can answer this question. What is RAML? Can you give me an answer? What is RAML?
Jitendra, RAML is an API modeling language where you can specify the actions like get, delete, put, and all, and then what exactly it happens like when you call. We can actually design the API before we start building it.
Okay. Correct. So first I will clear the question of Kirti Tara Dongare. So Helios is nothing. It's a hypermedia as an engine of application state. What does this mean? I will explain you. Okay, let me explain in some better from my notepad. So let's consider generally I have an accounts request. Okay, I have two URLs. Basically accounts for switching all the accounts. Then I have a accounts / account ID. Okay, so this is two method which is used to retrieving the accounts and all the account ID, like all the accounts and the account on the basis of single accounts basically. Okay, this is get. Let me explain. I have requested something called like first I will explain level 2. So I have requested account details. So this is my array. Okay, so let me explain you what is hypermedia. So under that I have an account ID which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I can put account type is a savings. Okay. Let me copy this and I can say control account, and this is so first a person has requested account. So basically I got the two accounts basically. Okay, now if a customer want to request the single account, so what it will do, so we will fetch a single account. So in this it will fetch this much of account only. A single account will give a single account detail. Okay, I got a single account detail. In hypermedia, what happens? Basically, if you see, it will embed a link. It will say what is the next operation you can perform. So generally, if you see on the mobile application, you will see like mobile application or web application. You go to banking site, it will list down all your accounts. With all account, you will have a link, hyperlink to that particular. If you click on that link, it will provide that account detail. Correct? You have seen that, right? So basically, you go to your banking site, you will see all the list of your account basically. Correct? And if you click on that particular account, it will provide that detail. So for clicking on that account, so to get all the details of that account, we will use this second endpoint. So what it does in Hypermedia Helios, it also provides the links. Basically, it will say ref, and something like under ref, it will provide links or URL. We can call this as a URL. It is saying what is the next operation you can perform. Links, and then it will say accounts /12332 like that. Same thing it will show in the second. So next time you can simply use this. You can link this account with your on your application, and you can just click here. You will get all this detail. Like this. Here account number will be 1233442. This is how the Helios has been used. So here you are saying to your client what is the next operation you can perform basically. What is the next URL you can call? So you are embedding the link with your response. That is the Helios. Is this answer your question, Kirti? Okay, good. So I will move on. So we have a lot of things to complete. So now I will go with the RAML. So RAML, like it is initially proposed in 2013, and like RAML, as everybody knows, like it is authored by Yuri Sarit and like there Emiliano Lisende and Santiago Vacas and the Damian Martinez. So these are the people who have like authored the RAML, and generally it got the support from technology leader by MuleSoft, AngularJS, Programmable Web API Sense. Those are different. But MuleSoft has widely adopted this RAML basically. So RAML is nothing. It's a REST API modeling language, which is the YAML base for describing your RESTful API. So basically, what happens? So previously, for SOAP-based application, we are using the WSDL, the like web service description language. But the WSDL cannot be read by the business people, but it can be read by the technology people, right? But RAML, what RAML does? So RAML write a documentation that can be read by any business people also, that can be read by any developers, right? So generally what happens when we write the RAML, it generates a documentation, right? It generates the API specification, which can be exposed over the developer portal, and any consumers want to consume the API, they can just see that developer portal and they know what are the things required to consume the API. They can easily consume it, right? That is the one of the advantage we are getting. But with WSDL, what is happening? Like everybody cannot go and read the WSDL. The person must be the highly skilled for reading the WSDL. He should know the base concept of the SOAP and everything. That's why I mentioned the RAML is the platform independent. So generally RAML is a REST API modeling language. It is used to generate the API specification or API documentation, which can be exposed over the developer portal, right? So that is why the RAML come into the picture. Okay. So basically RAML is capable of describing the APIs that do not obey all the constraints, and it encourages reuse, enable discovery, pattern sharing, aims of the merit based emergency of best practice. So basically we will going to discuss like in next slides, like how we can reuse the session, like reuse the RAML, how we can modular the RAML. So those kind of things we will discuss. So I think everybody knows why we write a RAML, right? So once we write a RAML, we can the documentation automatically generated. Like we can also use the API kit router to generate our flows also. So these are the things we get from the RAML. Let me talk about the components. So we will going to talk about resources, methods, responses, threads, and resource type, security schema, libraries, security fragments, overlays, and the extension. These are the components we will going to learn with a live demonstration. So there are different type of RAML data types. So the parent data type is any, and like under the parent, we have a time only, date time only, date only, number. Under number you can have an integer. Then we have a Boolean, string, null, file, array, object, union. Then we have a JSON schema, and we have a XSD schema. So these are the data types supported by the RAML. Okay, what is the use case for today's demo? So we will have a list. We will list all the accounts for the customer. We will list a single account. These are the APIs which we will going to develop. These are the open banking APIs we will going to use in our today's demo. create account, list transactions for the account, list single transaction for account, list statement for account, list single statement, list customer details, and create custom. At the end of the session, I will share the code with everyone. Okay. So what is resource type? Can anybody explain what is resource type? Anybody knows about resource type?
Yes, can I speak?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, resource type it's like a template that is used to specify the description, the method, and the parameters that can be used by multiple other resource without the need to rewrite the duplication code or coding. Yeah.
Correct. You are right. You are absolutely right. So basically, resource type is basically a template that is used to define the description, method, parameter that can be used by multiple resource without writing duplication of code. What does this means? So basically, what happens? So I have a get. If I consider like get method, under get you always define description. You always define responses. You always define like what is the body type. So for all the get method, you define the same thing, right? Why should we write this code as again and again for each and every method? Why we cannot centralize this code and we reuse across all the methods or all the resources? We can do that, right? So that is where a resource type come into the picture. So whatever the code you define under the resources or under the method of the resources, you can reuse that. You can pick out that code. You can pick that code and you can keep under the some centralized file, okay, or send under the resource type. So you can reuse across the multiple resources. I will show this demo. Okay, so let me go with the second concept, a threads. Anybody knows what is threads? You will better understand. I will give one example. Okay, what is threads?
Threads.
Okay.
I think it's like a function and are used to define the common attributes for the HTTP method like get, put, post, patch, etc. Such as it whether it's not or filterable, searchable, or pageable. It's kind of stuff that raise.
Correct. Aruna Kumar, you are right. Basically, you are also right, and like you mentioned correctly, like what's your name? So yeah, you also mentioned correctly. Okay, that's fine. So threads is like if you have a common headers, if you have a common attributes, if you have a common query parameter, if you have a common error response, right? So those kind of things you can move it to the threads and you can reuse across the multiple methods or multiple resources. Basically, I will call this as a multiple method. So basically, let's consider I have this particular response. Like I have defined some error response. Basically, I have I have a 400, I have a 401, I have a 402, I have a 500. So those kind of error response, I don't have to define for each and every method. Doesn't make sense, right? So I can move this code into the threads and I can simply call the thread. It's like a function. So basically what you do, you can move your common code to the function and you can call that function into your implementation. So that is how that is where you use the threads. So mostly the threads is used for the people will ask what is difference between resource type and threads. So threads is basically used if you want to move the common headers or query parameters or error response type. Those kind of things you can define in the threads. But if you want to describe all this responses like 200 body, this application JSON, like whatever the like I will say a behavior expects of the API that you have to define. Whatever the resource level you have to define, those you can define in the resource type basically. Okay, let me quickly start with my RAML. I will move to the second part later. So what I will do, I will go to my AnyPoint platform and I will go to Design Center. So first example, we will see a threads, how we can define a thread basically. Okay, so let me do one thing. I will create a new API specification. New API specification. I can say open banking Surat API. That's it. Okay. Create API specific. I will share all this code to you after the end of the meeting. I will just upload to GitHub so you can get the code. So we will going to write a lot of code today. let me go to my use case. So I want list of accounts for all the customers. Any question? Okay. So I have defined my RAML. So in this RAML, I have one root RAML where I will start writing my code. So basically, the first thing I want to write. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
The first API we will going to route. We will write accounts. So I want to fetch all the accounts basically. Under account, I will write a get method, which our description. Okay. Which is fetch all accounts for customers. Okay, this is one. Then under that, I can define. I have defined the get responses. Then I will have a 200. So I'm defining responses 200. Then my body will of type application / JSON. Okay. Then I want to define example. Okay. So for that, it's a best practice. You keep all your example under. You create a new folder. You can say examples. I want to define my JSON. I create a new folder called examples. Under examples, I will create some example file. I will say new file. I can say JSON file or other. And I can say accounts.json. Under that, I will just copy my examples of accounts. So this is my account JSON. Okay. Then I will define. I will just put all my examples now only. So I want a balance also. I will say other. Then I want a balance.json. Okay. This is my balance. The next thing I will define a transaction.json. So generally, this is best practice. Always keep all the example into a single folders. So it will give a good look to your RAML. Like everything is well organized basically. And this is transactions. Define my all the examples. Now I can go to my open banking and I can say example. I can say exclamation include. I can say examples. Under examples, I can say accounts.json. You can see your method, your code is been automatically generated. Okay, now I want to define some error codes also. So for that, I will create a new folder. Under that, I can say error examples. Okay, create. I can go there. I can define some files. So I want to define some error code examples. So I can say other. Under other, I can say like 400.json. Okay. And I can say error. I can say bad request, comma error code is 400, like that. Okay. So I will define more files like that. So I can say file, new file, other, 401. Say unauthorized. Like that, I will define one more file for 500 codes also. You can keep a single file also, that is doesn't matter. You can keep the single file, but I generally create a separate file. You can say internal server error. Okay. So I've defined my example file error files. So what I can do, I can go here. I can say 401 body application as JSON. And I can say example. So include is the keyword which is used to read the example from the folder. You can say error slash 400.401.json. I can copy this. So 401 instead of 401, I can write 400. Then I can write 500 and change the file name. Now we have defined that. If you see the get method, so here you will see everything. You see 200, so 400. What is the response for 400? All the error types, right? So this documentation has been automatically generated. But let me show you like other thing, like copy this whole thing, enter. Okay. So here if you see, I'm writing this code duplicate every time, right? Error code. This error code I am keep on writing as a duplication of the code. Let me do tab. Yeah, I just want account. Okay. So let me do tab like let me write it. So it's a get description each single account. Okay. Then instead of that, a fetch single account, I can say response is 200. It's a body application fetch JSON. Then you can say example include example slash accounts dot JSON. Okay. So you have defined like accounts and account type. Now I have to copy this error codes basically for this method also, right? So does this make sense, right? It doesn't make sense, right? Why we have to write this duplication of the code there again? Why I have to copy for this also, right? We don't have to do that. So for that we will use a threads. So let me create a new folder called threads. We call this as a error threads. Okay. Then under threads, I can go to threads. I can create a new file. So new file of type threads basically. Okay. So I can say error response thread. error response thread basically. Okay, I can create. So what I can do, so I can go there and I can copy this code basically. I can copy this code and I can go to this file. Okay, under this file I can say responses. Control V. Okay, let me do the correct alignment. Why we are getting this error? Because error example and these threads are at the same location, same at the same folder, like at the same folder root basically. So you can say dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash. So I move all this common code of error into the threads basically. Now what I can do, I can go to my main RAML. Okay, so basically I can go to my main RAML basically. In main RAML, what I can do, I want to use the threads. So what we will do? Anybody knows that? What we will do now?
Using is keyword we can.
Okay. So first we have to call a threads at the top of your top of your root of RAML. You can say threads. Then you have to give some name to threads, some ls or something like that. Error rest. Okay. Then you have to use the keyword called include. Exclamation include. Then you can say error. Control space. Error threads. Then error thread system. Okay, I put it 2 times. Okay, so now you can use the keyword called is, right? And copy this ls name. I can remove this code. I don't need it now. Okay, the same thing I can define for this second also. So I can simply use is bracket. So if you see, can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, because my key. So if you see, now the error response is showcased for everything, like still, like if you see, let me do that. Let me go back and let me do get for both. Okay, the error response is not visible yet. Let me check why. Just a minute. Well, this is fine. This is fine. Okay, let me check error threads. Yeah, because it's a response. Sorry, typo mistake here. It's a response. Now it should come. So go back to your RAML and click on this get. You can see 400, 401, 500 for this method. Okay. Now let me go back to other method. You can see for this also. So like that, you can apply for each and every method. So now I want for balances also. So this makes life easier basically, right? So you don't have to write the duplication of the code again and again. Correct?
Jackie, there is a question from Nikunj.
Yeah, tell me, Nikun.
Yeah.
Let me take the question. But what I want to only include particular error response code and all define. No, like what? It's not like that. Like if you are defined whatever, you have to extract the completely threads, not for one code basically. Then you define the multiple threads. Niku is like with a single error response and with the multiple. That's how you can do that. You can call the multiple threads basically into a single for the single resource. That is possible. Okay. So let me quickly move on. Like now the next API we have to define the balance API. So I will quickly define a balance API. Balances. Then I have a get. Then I have is with error response. Simple, like how we like we if we are writing the error code for each and every resources, our code may look bigger. Right now the code look smaller. We will make this code for 2 or 3 line also. Like you will see this code will convert it into 2-3 lines. Okay, we will see that also. So just stay with me. Description which balances, then the responses, which count balance, okay, responses 200 body application/JSON example include examples slash balances dot JSON. Okay. So we have 3 endpoints. So I will not write transaction endpoints and all those things. That's fine. Like this will be enough because it is consuming more time. It's the same thing. Like we have to keep on writing the same thing. So now we have defined 3 endpoints. But if you see this get here, everything is duplicated. Like this code is completely duplicated, right? If you see this code, the get if you see the structure is same, right? Only the response is changing, like account, the JSON file. The rest of the things remain same. But this code is duplicated, right? And we will see how we can make it, how we can reuse that code. But let's wait. Before that, we will move to security schema. At the end, I will show that, So let me go to security schema. Anybody knows what is the security schema? Anybody is aware what is security schema? Anyone? So basically, a security schema is the facility provided in the RAML to enable authentication and the authorization on the top of your API. Basically, you are telling your client what is the authentication is being enabled on your API basically. So it doesn't validate the data. It doesn't validate the token, client ID, client secret, but it will check whether this particular headers or whether this authorization parameter is coming into your input request. But it will not validate the data. For validating the data, you have to apply the API policy. Just make sure the security schema is nothing. It's a template or scheme which we are defining in the RAML to tell the consumer that we are using this security mechanism for this particular API. So whenever the request will come, we will check whether this parameter is available or not. The RAML will only validate that. But for client ID, client secret, or any token validation, you require to apply the policy basically. Okay. The first level of check will be done by the RAML, whether it will check whether this parameter is available or not in your input request. If those available, then the API, you need to apply the API policy for checking the credentials basically. Okay. You got my point? Any doubt there before I move into? Nitish, can you enable the mic for Ramsi Krishna? Okay. So now what I will do as a best practice, I will create another folder which is known as security schemes, new folder. Security schemes. Create. Under security schemes, I will create a file of type security schemes. Okay, which I can say a banking security scheme. Now I want to tell my customer I want to enable the client ID and the client secret on the top of my API basically. Okay. So the first thing, for defining custom security schemes, you always start with X, and I can say client custom, something like that. So it will always start with X hyphen. So these are the some already defined, like if you find, like if you see there are few or type already there, or 0 or 2 1 basic authentication, digest authentication, pass through. But if you want to define anything custom, you can always use X hyphen, then whatever parameter you need, whatever name you want to give, you can give that. Okay. So what I'm doing, X custom scheme, then I will give some description. I can say client ID and client secret authentication. Okay, this is just a description, this is just a metadata. Now I have to use the keyword described by. So where you want the parameters, header, query parameter, where I want in the headers, so I will say headers basically. Okay, so what you want in header, I want a client ID. Okay, so you can give, you can say description. So client ID in, you can simply say client ID, that's fine, like this, it's just a description. Then you want a client secret description, client secret. Okay, also you can define, like if anything goes wrong with client ID and the client secret, what response you will get. So you can say responses. Okay, and the responses you can say 401, and I can put a description like 401 unauthorized. Okay, any doubt? Like I define my security schema here. Now I want to use the security schema to my main RAML. Okay, so for using the security schema to main RAML, let me check what is this error. This should not be error. Yeah, because I put at a wrong place. It should be below the header. So it's very important, like your indentation are correct in your RAML basically. Okay, so I define that. I will go to main RAML. In main RAML, like threads, what we can do, we can use security schemes. Okay, you can give the name to security schemes. You can define a LIS. I can say like custom security. Okay, and like I can say like include is the keyword. Exclamation include custom, not custom. It's a, you have to give a secret control space. This kind of control space. So this is how you have to define. Now you want to secure a API. Either you can, if you want to secure a single API, a single endpoint, like you can give the secured by keyword here. But if you want to secure all the APIs, you can simply use a secured by. Okay, you can secure by, and you can say, you can copy this custom security. So you have secured all the API, this particular like authentication mechanism. If you see now, let's wait. I will say try it. It asking for a client ID and the client secret. I can say authorization send. It will not. So if I put anything, it will not validate data, but it requires those parameters. Now it will send the request. I got 200 successful. Okay. Any doubt on security schemes? I can take few questions now.
There's a question from Kirti Dhara.
Do we have to specify provider of the custom schema at the time of the, how does it pick the corresponding auth library? Kirti, can you repeat this? Can you speak up this question? I am like, how do we have to specify the provider of custom scheme? See, it is not always necessary. Even if you don't provide it here, yeah, even you don't provide the security schema, is that's fine. Like your consumer will know, you never knows like what kind of authentication mechanism you are using, but you are applied the policies there. Your policy will reject the request if the proper authentication data is not coming. Okay, so it is always not necessary. Basically, Kirti, I will give. So some people doesn't define the security schema also because they directly apply the policy. But as a best practice, you need to define a security schema at the time of design to tell the consumer what authentication mechanism you are using for your API. Basically, yes, you can do that. So basically, currently I've used the secure by at a root level, right? You can use that secure by keyword at a resource level. In that case, you can apply a multiple different authentication mechanism for different APIs. Basically, that is how you can do that. Yes, correct. Yeah, Kirti. Okay. So let me quickly move to next concept. Okay. So next, what we will do, we will use the library. Let me go to presentation quickly. So we talk about the security schema. Now, what is the library? Can anybody knows what is library? So library, library is basically used to modularize any number and combination of data types, security scheme, resource type, threats, and annotation. So basically, it's kind like if you are taking any Java code or any .NET code where we have a utilities, where we have a Java like libraries, we keep a common codes or which has to be used across the multiple files, right? So we put that into the libraries. So it's a similar concept. So you want to modularize your code. Like if you want to modularize your resource type, if you want to modularize your data type, you use the library. So library is nothing, it's a combine any collection of data type, declaration, resource type, thread, security schema into the modular externalized reusable group. Okay, let me show. So basically what we talk libraries can be used with resource type, threads. You can define the library for resource type, library for threads, library for security schemes, whatever, you can do that. So let me tell you more about library with the example. So let me go with API manager first. So what I will do, I want this code. I don't want to write this duplication of code again and again. Like if you see for balance, for everything, I have written this duplication of code. How can I avoid that? So we will create a folder called library. Okay. So let me. Okay. So I will create a folder. We will see two libraries. One with the data type and one with the resource type. So I will create under library. I will create a library of type resource type. I can say new file. Under new file, I can say resource type, not resource type. I will say library. Okay. This library, I will name this as a banking resource types.raml. Okay. Okay. Now what I will start writing my resource type here. I can remove this uses. Instead of that, I can simply write resource types. The resource type, I want collection. I want to give. So basically, what we want. Okay, let me write one more thing. Can I go to open banking? Okay, that's fine. So now what I have to do? What I'm trying to do now, let me show you. I'm writing this. How can I be a code? So I'm writing this thing into the security schema, and we will going to reuse across all the methods. Okay. So let me go to banking resource type. Okay. Let me say the first method is get. Under get, I want to give a description. So I can say page the. So there's a keyword called resource path name. It will automatically read the resource path name details. So it will say, if I'm using the account, it will say fetch the account's details. If I say fetch balance, it will automatically say the fetch the balance details basically. Okay, so that's the one thing. I want to use the threads here also. Threads there, I can use it here. So I can say error threads, and under error threads, okay, so I can say include dot slash. So I give this name as a threads, right? Error. So here I can use a threads directly. Is error threads. So we have given this. Now responses, I can say 200 body application slash JSON. I can say example. Okay. Now here I will use a pipe basically. And for if I want to go to a second line, right, I can use the pipe, and under the pipe I can give a parameter called here. See, for get method for account balance, the response can change, right? This parameters, everything is same, but response will change, right? So I can say example. I can define some parameter here. So we can pass this. This is some parameter. Like in function, we define some parameter and we pass that value, right? So example reference one is kind of parameter, and then we will pass the value basically. Also, I will define some method for post also. Post is error threads description, like create. Again, I can say resource part name details. So it will say create balance customer whatever, like it will say. Okay. So now the next thing, I have to define a request body. Body, I can say app application slash JSON. Then under the body, I can give example. I can say pipe. If I am going to second line, example, this is my second parameter, example reference 2. Now the third thing, I can define a responses 200 body application at JSON. Example, I can give this as a pipe. Yeah. Example reference 3. Okay. So I defined my request and response. These are some parameters. We will dynamically change this value. That's why you always define this into a triangle bracket basically. Okay. So now what will happen? So I want to put a question mark here after get. Can anybody tell me why we are putting this question mark? Any idea?
Optional.
Yeah, Rahul, I haven't put anything in the thread. I put the resource type in the library. Okay, and why I am calling the threads there? Because I don't want to call the threads directly in my main RAML. Okay, so that's why I called the threads there. I'm using the threads in that particular library, in the resource type library. Okay, I haven't defined any resource type, any threads in the resource type. Okay, I'm just calling it whatever threads we've defined. Yeah. Yeah, why I am putting this question mark? It's a very important thing. Why I'm putting this question mark? See, here somebody asked me, I'm just calling the threads. My threads is defined in the thread file, right? Here I'm only defining a resource type. Okay. So I'm telling why I'm putting the question mark. If I don't put the question mark, what will happen? If I want to implement a resource type for this account ID, I have to implement get and post both. If I put the question mark, in that case, I don't want to call this both get and post. Either I can use get or even post. If I don't want to use any method, I can use. Can we go on mute, please? Okay. So if I don't put the question mark, when I will call the resource type into my main RAML, I have to implement all the method for that particular resource. If I don't put the question mark, if I put the question mark, then it become optional basically. Otherwise, it is mandatory. Okay, that's why we have to put a question mark. So this is how we have defined that. Now next thing. Now we will reduce the code. You will see the code will reduce drastically. So now I want to call a library into my main RAML first. What we can do? What keyword we use to call the library? We use uses. Okay. For library we use uses. Then I will give a name as a banking resource type. Okay. And under banking resource type, here you don't use the include keyword also. I can say library / control space. This is the way you call the library. A keyword called uses, banking resource type, library. In other we use include. For library we don't do that. Okay. Let me remove all this code. I don't want all this code now. Simply what I can do, I can use a type. Okay. Under type, I can use this curly bracket, and you call this banking resource type dot. Dot what control space? Right, saying no suggestion. Let me check. You can say resource type dot collection, banking resource type dot collection. Okay. Then under that you have to pass all the variable. So our first variable is example reference 1. What was that? We have to pass an example, include examples accounts dot JSON. Okay, that's it. And then the method which you have to implement, you can say get. Right? Yeah, you can see the get method has came here with all the proper request, response, and everything. You can see that. Okay, 200. You can include example JSON dot. Yeah, I put something wrong. It exclamation. Same thing. I will remove this code also. I will copy this code. I will just enter. I will paste it. Okay. For account ID also we have the same response. For balances, we will just change this parameter to balances. You can see your code has been reduced drastically, right? You can just, now I have used to get. Let's consider if I want to use some query parameter for this get. So I can simply say a query parameters, and I can say customer ID required to type history. So that is how you can do that. Like it will like use all the like whatever example we are passing from here, and like it will use the extra query parameter customer ID. It will add that, right? Now I want to use the post method also. So simply I can say post, but for post we have to pass some parameters, right? We have to pass example reference 1 and reference 2 type. Then I can say example reference 2, and it also expecting example reference 1, 3 basically. Example reference 2. Then the second parameter is example reference 3, I will just give some any example for now. Examples slash accounts dot JSON. No, I have done some mistake. I have done it the wrong place, I think. It has to be done here. Comma. Example. I will explain again. Include examples slash accounts dot JSON. Or simply what you can do, you don't have to write it again and again. You can say Control X and you can simply pass it here itself and remove all this thing. You don't require. You just require post. Yeah, you have to give a proper comma. Yeah, you can see that. Now, like what I've done, I will tell you. So basically in resource type, I have two methods like get and post, right? I want to implement this both method for one of the resources. And if you see for get and post, we have to pass 3 parameters in this resource type. Example reference 1, example reference 2, example reference 3. For post require example reference 2 and example reference 3. For get example reference 1. So what I've done, I've used the type and this particular ls which I've called it here dot collection, the collection which I've defined in resource type. Then I pass example reference 1, example reference 2, example reference 3 because it required by get and the post. So post will use example reference 2 and example reference 3, whereas get will use the example reference 1. Similarly, I have defined for other method also simply a get method, So I want to define only get method for this, right? I want to define a get method for this. If I don't put this question mark, let's see what happens. I will tell you. I can show now. I remove this question mark. What is happening here? So it will say you haven't implemented the post for this account ID and this balance. For the first, it's not giving error because we have already implemented. Okay. And for second, it is giving error. Okay. So let me remove this. Let me put a question mark again. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
Jackie, we can hear you.
Yeah. Let me refresh it here. Hello?
Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, just a minute. Hello?
Yes, Jackie, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just refreshing one. Hello, Nitish, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. And
I have some issue. I think some issue. Yeah, that's fine. So David, is it possible to parameterize the example in order? Yeah, you can do that. Okay, so you can definitely do that. Okay, so you can see get post for everything. So I don't want. So what I will do, I will again go and put the question mark. So it is my library. So I will put the question mark. If I don't put the question mark, it will ask me to implement both the resources basically. Okay. So any question on resource type, threads, library, anything like that. So before we go and define other data types basically. Any question? No, you can create a separate entity also. So resource, it also provides the RAML to directly you can create a resource type. Generally, I recommend it to use the library because you can reuse across the multiple RAMLs also. Like, yes, definitely I will show the main. Don't worry, I will give this complete RAML to you. Okay. This is my, see how the RAML, how we have written the big RAML. Now it's become very small, right? So if you see, if you have 100 of methods in one RAML, so this resource type and threads are very useful. Usually this is my main RAML basically. Okay. So I will quickly move to a data type basically. How can we define so currently what we have done, we have defined the examples, like, you know, all these examples basically, balance and all this balance, JSON, transaction, all example. If I want to define in the form of data types, how can we do that? Let me show that. So I will create a new file and I will call this as a library again. Generally, I recommend it to use library. New file. I will use RAML 1.0. I will use a library. Then I can say customer data type. Okay. So instead of, I will define a data type here basically. Okay. So I will define a types. It start with types. Then it's customer type, properties, and I will define a first name. I'm just creating the RAM. Here, what I'm doing, like, generally we directly provide the example, but there's other way. You can generate your JSON. This is the way, like, this is the data type. In this, what you are binding your data type, your length, and everything, whether it's required or whether it's not required. Those kind of things can be achieved here, basically. Okay, those kind of validation can be achieved here. So now I will say a type. I will say string. And I can say required. I will say true. And also you can give an example. Okay. So first name, I can give example as John. Now I will copy this. I cannot write again. So first name, then I can say last name is whatever, and then I can say age. I can say age of type integer. Okay. Here I can say 25. Okay. So this is age. Now what I have to define a phone data type. A data type of type address. The address. I will show you like what is happening here. You will come to know. Then I can say properties. I can say street. It is of type string. Example 101 Oxford. Then I can define type is done. I can say required true, like that. I will copy this. So this is my street. Then I can say city. I can just change the example. London. Then after city, it will be state. After state, it can be country. Then it will be postal code. Then finally, it will come address type. So generally address type. So for address type, what I will do, I will define this as an enum basically. Okay. So instead of giving all this thing, I can say enum. I can say home or office. I will define one more type of properties, which is of type phone. Type properties. Then I will define a phone number. This is very important. Like, you know, you will see like what is happening here. Type string. I can say required to example. This. I can also define a phone type of type enum. Okay. Mobile. Office. So there is a two way of defining enum or home. This is how you can define the enum. So now I've defined my library. Now I can go to a main RAML. Under main RAML, I have to call this RAML. So basically, I can say customer data lib, which is of like, you know, I can say call library. Press enter. Customer data type. So now what I will do, I will not going to do anything with this. So instead of that, I can define a new resources v1.0/customers. Under that, I can say get description, get customer details. Okay. Under that, I can say responses 200 body. Application/JSON. Okay. So next thing, like I want to call the data type here. So for that, you don't use the example, you use type basically, which is of type. So copy this customer data lib dot. What? Let me copy that. Now, if you see in the get method, if you see the example, you okay, I only see the first name, last name, and the age, but why we cannot see phone and all those things, right? Why? So basically, you have to call in this data type phone also. Basically, how we can call this as a phone? We can say phone of type phone, which is of type array. Okay, same thing, address. Now if you go to back to your get method, let me check if something is changed. Yeah. Of type array. For defining array, you put a 2 square bracket. So if you go to main RAML now, and click on this get. Now you can see your address and everything. I want this like customer detail also into the array. So simply you can put array here. So it will come into array basically. You can see this is into the array. So that is where we can use this particular data types basically. Any question on this? See, collection is name I given in the resource type. You can give any name, Akirti. See, there, see, Midun, it's very simple. Like where you want a multiple resource type to define. So, like there might be like get method. The behavior of the get method can change for multi-type different, like for different resources. In that case, you have to define a multiple resource type. You know. So sometimes post method, like in some post method, the implementation is bit different. Like and the implementation for some post is bit different. In that case, you can define the multiple resource type. So you don't put required equal true. You can, you know, it's optional only. Like simply, it's optional. You don't make this whatever the field inside the address required equals to true. It will become optional. So, but use case is not clear. Thank you. In case of enum, they are not defined. I haven't got your question, like Kirti. See, data type, see, basically what happens, let me explain you once again. So I've defined my data type in library. What happened, I defined with examples. If I directly, I can define the customer details in my example, right? I can directly put that here. So what the advantage we are getting defining the data, see where we are binding a type of, like what is the type of field, whether it is required, what will be the length, what is the example, those kind of things we are binding. If some, like if whenever the request is coming, it can validate it, the data type, whatever coming in the request, it's proper. If anything goes wrong, it get rejected at the RAML level. That's why we define the data type. Okay, got my point, Kirti? Otherwise, you can define directly. Enum having the list only we can expect under the yes. So if you like correct. If you like if you are if your phone type is home, office, or any other, if the value other than whatever we define in the enum, right, it will reject it at the RAML level itself. Okay. Let me go to next case. So let me do one thing. I will copy this library code, customer data type code, and I want to reuse this code across the RAML, basically across the multiple RAML. Then the fragments come into picture. So go to design center. So now whatever we define the library resource type, we can use within the RAML. But if you want to reuse code across the RAML, what you can do? So for that, we use the fragments. So basically, the concept called fragments. Basically, okay, we will going to see how we can create a fragments. So like in your case, like if you have a domain model, if you have a canonical schemas, and if you want to use those domain model and the canonical schema, whatever security schemes across the RAML, right? You don't have to define the security schema again and again in your RAML. You can move that security schema into fragments, and you can call that fragments into your RAML. Let me show you how we can create a fragment. Create a new fragments. I can say open banking fragments of type. I will say library, create fragment. It's I given the wrong name, that's fine. So I create a fragments. So fragments have a property that like you can manage the version of fragments. It can be published to any point exchange basically. Keep this in the mind. I can simply say Control V. So I move this code to the fragments basically. Once I move the code to the fragments, I can simply publish it. So what advantage we are getting now? We can reuse this code across the multiple RAMLs basically. That is the advantage we are getting from the fragments. So you can manage the different version of fragments basically. That is also one of the advantage of fragments. Publish to exchange. It's done. Now I will go back to my RAML, original RAML, design center. I want to reuse the data from multiple resources. In one resource, address should not come. Yeah, you can do that. Like, like you can definitely do that. Like then in that case, you have to define the multiple data types basically. Yes, correct. You can make the optional and like also you can define a multiple date I will tell you. I can tell you how can we do that. I will tell you. Okay, let me finish this. I will tell you. So open banking Surat API. Okay, here I can simply say, not here, here, import from exchange, not all, and this is belongs to my. So I want to import this particular fragment. I can say import asset. So I want to use this fragment basically. Say I can change simple change here. I can say pen control space. Okay, that's it. That's the change we require. And if you see, there's a no changes, like your code remains same basically. It's completely same. So now it is using this particular fragment, which we have. It is using the fragment library basically. Okay. So somebody mentioned like I want to use like address for one thing, phone for one thing. It's very simple. What you can do, you can define your type basically, a different types basically. So I can say like no, I will. This is one customer type. Okay, so where I just want to define, I want to just show the address and phone both, but I just want to show the phone only. So I can define a different type, phone type. Okay, under that I just want I can say properties. Okay, and I can say I just want phone basically, right? So I simply say phone curly bracket, right? Like that. And if you want any other field, you can do that. Now you can go to your main RAML and you just change this to, so for the new method, you just change this custom, instead of custom data customer type, you can call that as a phone type. That is how you can do that. Is this clear, the question? So you can define the multiple data types and all those things, right? Vams either, yeah. Is this clear, the question how we can do that, right? Hello.
Yeah, hi Jitendra.
Yeah, is this clear, the question?
No. Actually, I mean, like, for example, if I want to call that customer types in multiple places, so
Yeah.
for particular resource, I don't want that address element should be appear.
No, see, if you are calling customer type, right? So that if you are calling this customer type, I already have an address there, right? I define in my schema, then it will definitely appear. So that's why I'm saying you create a different property, a different type. In that you don't define this address, like you can define like this. You can copy this particular part, okay? And just you don't want this particular address, you can do like this, basically. That is only one way. And you can call this phone type instead of customer type. In this, the customer address will not appear. once you have defined anything under that particular type, right, that will definitely appear. Okay, you don't have a control, but you can definitely make this as an optional, but it will be visible in the schema, in your RAML schema. You don't have a control on that, right? For that you define a different type. You got that?
Yes, so we don't have optional to make that element in.
You cannot make it invisible.
Okay.
Basically it will be visible in your schema. Okay, for that you have only option, you define a different type basically, and you call that type basically. This is the only way, Vamsidhar, like there is no other way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any question on this? Like so we have covered a lot of things, like resource type, we have covered traits, we have covered security schemes, we have covered library, we have covered data types, we have covered fragments. Any question on this before we cover this? We are very like we don't use that concept, but let me cover those also, like I will cover those things also, like extension and the overlays. So basically, overlays and extension are module defined in the external file that are used in the API. So basically, overlays is used to extend non-behavior aspects of your API. Like if you want your description in uses must be override. So let's consider you have written your description and the like any uses or documentation in the English language. If you want those in the Spanish language, you can use the extension. If you want to define in multiple language, you can use the extensions basically. Okay, whereas like sorry, you can use the overlays, whereas extension is used to override or used to extend a behavior aspect of your API. Basically you have written the get method for one resource. If you want to extend this to the post method, you can definitely write an extension to extend it to the post method. Let me show that. Let me quickly show that. Where is my, I will create a new project. Overlays extension. Okay. Okay, so I will write just some method. I say accounts, and I can say get, and then like I can give some description. Page account details. Then I can say responses 200. Then I can say body application JSON. Top I can give images. So like when I say like non-behavior aspect, so it means uses, description, these are all non-behavior aspects of your API basically. When I say behavior aspects like get, responses, body, all these are the behavior aspects. So non-behavior it's nothing, it's a metadata basically, and behavior it's an actual implementation of your API basically. So let me do one thing. Now I want this description and this uses in my Spanish language basically. Let me open translate also. How we can support a multiple language. So let me show that. I can create a new file of type overlays. You can say overlays. I can say this is my Spanish overlay. Create. So here it's a very key. So this overlay need to extend which RAML. So I have my parent RAML. So I will give my parent RAML path. And then you can define a similar, like it accounts get and description I want to define a description, right? In my page account detail. Similarly, I can say page Spanish. I can copy this. I can simply say page account detail. Not here, sorry. I want to go in Spanish overlay, and I want to give a uses also in Spanish language. Right now, if you see get, okay. No, I have pasted it at wrong place, I think. Yeah. If you see it got in the Spanish language, like whatever, like the overuse uses of this particular API, you can see that it's in the Spanish language basically. See, you can see everything is in the Spanish language accounts basically. If you see, this is the Spanish language, like, right? So that is how the extension is main function of overlays is like when you want to write the API, you have already existing API in the English language. But like if you want to support other language called Spanish or French or any other Hindi or any whatever, so you can make use of this overlays basically. The next thing I will show the example with extension. So what overlays do, it will like override, or it will override the non-behavior aspect of API. Now we will see. Now what happened, like I have already have like a lot of APIs already have a get method XYZ, but I want to extend this API to have to implement post and other method. You can either write it here also, but the advantage of writing in extension, you can have a control on, like, those whatever you write, the API that can be only visible by the administrator basically. Sometimes what happens, like you take the example of library. So if you want to create a book, so the book can be created by only admin, not by other can just retrieve the book. So you want to keep your interface away from the implementation. In that case, you use the extension. So I will say new file, and I can say extension, and I can say a book extension, not book. I will simply say account extension. It. I can go to account extension, and I can say control space overlay extension example RAML. Then I can say slash. It already like override the get method. You can see that, right? Then accounts. I want to write a post method also. Okay. In post, I can give description. Page account details. So I create account details. Post. Body. So now if you see this particular extension, it will have a post method also with whatever things we have defined. So you are actually you are extending your like actual root RAML basically. So basically, if you want to hide some implementation from the developer portal, or like in the library, the admin only can create a book. You want to hide that method. In that case, you can define the extension and define those methods into your extension basically. So that is how you can achieve. Any question on this? See, Gajanan, like required we define at a field level, at an attribute level, but question mark we define at a resource level, whether we want to implement resource or not. Okay, same thing whether that field is required or not. Required we apply at the field or attribute level, and like the question mark we applied at the resource level. That is the difference. Oh, okay. So this is what all about. We have like completed all this concept related to RAML, which will extension have to implement it the same. No, you can use the same API key router Dhananjay, but it will be not visible on the developer portal. It will be hide from the developer portal. Okay.
Jackie Vamsi here. So we can use question mark at element level also.
You can use. I never tried that. Okay. So we can use that. Then it's good, but mostly at a resource level we use that. But at resource level we don't use required keyword. We use the question mark basically.
Thank you.
Oh. Thanks, Vamsi. Thanks. Yeah. So I've done this session. Any question like on the RAML? Nitish, you can give the access to everyone. So for everyone, you can give the access to everyone, enable the camera for everyone, so everyone can start the camera. Guys, should we go with quiz? See, Bhushan, I mentioned if you are defining the example, if you want to next line, that's why we use the pipe basically. Okay, so example, and if you are writing some example, if you want to move to the next line, you use the pipe to say that it's a continuation of the your example basically. Dhananjay, I haven't got your question. So guys, I will just ask everyone to give the feedback after the end, or you will receive the form. You just give the feedback. It helps us to improve. So if anybody also want to become a speaker, or anybody want to become want to give a session on this on the Surat MuleSoft Meetup, they can reach me on Nitish. Okay, and they can email us. We are looking for the speaker. So please give your name. Come forward and just try to speak in the Surat MuleSoft Meetup. We will definitely help you in the preparing the topic and all those things. Okay. So Nitish, I am moving to. I will just stop recording.
Sure, Jack.
Can we on the camera? Everybody, please on the camera. Basically, I will stop recording. Okay.